Hi, welcome to this episode of White Glove Geography, looking at UK food, water and energy issues. Today is all about water and matching the areas of supply to the areas of demand, and also thinking about water transfer schemes. Is there a deficit? Is there a surplus? Thinking about relief, precipitation, transfer and also population densities. In any country, there's a water balance. If the supply is greater than the demand, then there's a surplus. If the demand is greater than the supply, there's a deficit. So what does that mean? So the top one, the supply is greater than the demand. That means that the supply of water, the amount of water you get, is more than the amount of water you need. The bottom one, the demand, so the amount of water you want, is more than the amount of water that is available. That means there's a deficit. So just pause at this point, just make sure you get those two things in your head and you understand what surplus is and you understand what deficit is. Overall in the UK, it's probably likely we've got enough water. However, it's not distributed or it's not spread evenly. So the areas of demand is not where the areas of supply are. Just pause for a moment, have a look at these three maps and then revisit once you've studied these three maps. On initial inspection of these three maps, they all look quite different, but actually on closer inspection you can see there are some patterns taking place. I've identified three different areas A, B and C and D. So look at area A, so that's the Grampian Mountains. So the mountain areas, people don't want to live in mountainous areas, so on the left hand side there. On the middle map, the population distribution, there's very few people there, it's sparsely populated. And on the right hand map, you can see it gets loads of rainfall because in mountain areas the air is forced to rise over the mountains, and therefore as the air rises then it condenses, it cools and it rains loads. Also the same for area B, the Pennines, northern England, and also the same for area C, Wales, the Cambrian Mountains. However, area D in purple, that's very different. It's low, it's flat, and you can see it's a crowded area, it's densely populated, there's lots of people there. And on the right hand side, you can see that there's very little precipitation, so it's some of the lowest areas of precipitation. So what have we got? We've got where the water is, that's where the people aren't. And where there's loads of people, there's no water there. So across the UK, there's enough water, but it's not spread out evenly. Here's some information from the London and South East area. Where does tap water currently come from? In the north and west, typically it comes from reservoirs, so outdoor large lakes that hold the water and they supply the areas. There's lots of valleys, there's lots of mountains, and there might be dams that hold back the water. In the southeast, it's very, very different. A lot of their water comes from groundwater sources. So groundwater sources, we're thinking about aquifers, and it's taken out, or the geography term for that is it's abstracted. 19% comes from rivers and a few reservoirs, only 3, which is not many considering the amount of people in London and Greater London. And about 8% comes from neighbouring water companies. So they take it from other water companies and buy it from other water companies. And that is water transfer. The information here, this is for the southeast. As I say, it's very, very different, almost the entirely flipped opposite for the north and the west. The vast majority of water in the north and the west comes from reservoirs. We're going to think about what's going to happen in the future in the UK. It's likely there's going to be more water issues in the UK, more droughts. Now, we're not thinking about the droughts that we sometimes see, kind of famines and droughts in some parts of Africa when the rains haven't come for 2, 3 or even 4 years. All drought is for a period of time, the amount of water you need is less than the amount of water you get. And that might be 3, 4 or 5 months. And there, if you carry on using the water, there is going to be an issue. So on the left hand side, we've got a population change map. It's very clear that some of the darkest colours are in the southeast. So the area that already has a water deficit, it's likely there's going to be a greater water deficit because there's going to be even more people there. So there's going to be even more demand. So what do we do about it? Either you decrease the demand or you increase the supply, and that kind of helps the balance. So to decrease the demand, either you install things like hosepipe bans or water meters to encourage people to take more control of their own water usage, or you increase supply. The increased supply is a water transfer scheme. So you move the water from where it is to where it needs to be. Now these things can be incredibly expensive. Of course, there are already water sources that can be moved via rivers and canals and underground pipeworks, but those are not fully in place to transfer all the water that the southeast needs. We've got in blue, those are the current reservoirs and where they supply, and where they currently transfer water to. And in red, there's the suggested transfer schemes. And you can see there's a lot of suggestions on there. You're thinking about huge networks of pipes moving water from the north of the UK to the south and the east of the UK. Of course, that could solve the problem, but there's going to be massive opposition to this. Building pipework throughout the country impacts upon habitats and wildlife. So the water deficit, do you either decrease demand or do you increase supply?